Hi there, welcome to Awaken Leading Edge Masterclasses on Spirit Self and the Quantum Revolution. I'm your host for this event, Theresa Pridemore, owner of Sovereign Spirit, and I'm excited to introduce you to our next speaker, Sonja Francis. Hi, Sonja.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so delighted that you could join us. Thank you so
I
much.
feel so honored. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's such a treat.
Yeah.
Sonia is a certified astrologer and life relationship coach. Her passion is connecting with people and helping them transform their lives. This led her to train as a life coach in addition to her lifelong study of astrology. She currently serves dozens of clients across several continents via video chat and phone. She's been interviewed for her astrological insight on several internet radio shows and has written several articles for the NCGR quarterly journal, The Ingress. In addition, she was the host of her own fully sponsored astrology show on Bite Size TV until 2013. Sonia is currently a co-host of Soulivity Today, an international podcast radio show. Her show is called Hot Astrology Friday and airs once a month on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. PT via KMET Radio. Sonia has also created her own online community, a daily support system that helps individuals all over the world with their personal evolution and soul's journey. And our topic for this conversation is Pluto in Aquarius, a new era begins. I'm so intrigued.
Oh.
Um, but as we're before we jump in, I wanted to ask you, what is it that attracted you to astrology?
Um, that's a really complex question actually, but I will try to make it concise. I had a pretty, I guess, traumatic upbringing. I would say I felt very isolated as a child at home. I felt very different from my family, and I couldn't really understand how my family couldn't feel or sense what I was feeling or sensing, or that there was no recognition of who I was in that way. And so astrology has really become a tool that has helped me just make sense of so much of my life and who I am on an energetic level and who I am as a person and how I fit into my family of origin.
Mhm.
And um it's really helped me a lot to heal myself, but also heal my wound with my family.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that I found this tool so early in life, because I dove much deeper into that when I was only 19 years old.
Mm.
And it was also at the same time where I started connecting with sort of like a belief system that was more connected to reincarnation and soul connection and soul-based thinking. And so that's what also then guided, my needing to do astrology more in that direction, more in connection with, what does the soul want? What does the soul want when it chooses this chart to come into, this moment of time to come into, in terms of the astrology?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's very interesting to actually think about the fact that the soul made that choice. So it's not like chance that we have the chart that we have. It actually is a choice. That's really a beautiful way to look at it. I've never really thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and it's very empowering to think of it that way. So whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. What
Hmm.
matters is when you actually believe that you chose that life and you chose that chart. It really empowers you to live it more on purpose,
Mm.
and to also understand that whatever has happened to you, especially in your childhood, because a lot of that is karma and a lot of that is connected to, you chose that for a reason, that to work through some stuff. And when you feel that you've chosen that, it becomes more of a accomplishment. It's more like, oh, I chose that and I will work through this. Yes,
Mm.
rather than being the victim of the circumstance of what happened to you.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
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 It is, you know, it's funny. We all have histories and some of us have really difficult histories. I can relate to that myself. And my upbringing wasn't great either. And or some parts of it were, some weren't. But being able to really look at those karmic relationships and those choices that we make to have those experiences with other people, it can just totally transform our relationship to them as well,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably not have a relationship with my parents right now if it wasn't for astrology and if it wasn't for my shift in perspective in
Mm.
terms of like me choosing that situation, choosing that life.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you are also a life coach. Can you
Yeah.
tell me how life coaching became incorporated in what you do with astrology?
Yeah. So, because of my upbringing, I started at a very young age. I started to do therapy, all sorts of modalities, hypnotherapy, and then modern analytical therapy. And I worked through some of my own trauma through that, through some of the signatures from my childhood. And, um, it really taught me that a compassionate listener creates space for healing.
Mm.
That someone that lets you speak about what's been going on in your life is very healing and very supportive. And it gives you that sense of like, it's okay, I am okay, and somebody cares and somebody can listen to me, right? And that's very healing. And so um, it's just really been a gift to have that experience and to grow from that. And so I've always looked at life in terms of like wanting to heal and transform as much as possible because I felt that it was the best way forward. It was the best way to become the best version of myself. And so I just did a lot of stuff over the years. Like the last 30 years, I've just been doing so many modalities and things. And one of my favorite things has been the Sedona method. And I also did a coach's training in the Sedona method with Hale Dwoskin in 2009. And so ever since I've used that technique as my coach in my coaching practice and with my clients and by myself with my husband. And I just use it all the time because it's so powerful and so effective.
That's amazing. I don't know anything about the Sedona method. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very much about allowing things to be and to be very present to what shows up in your consciousness or in your awareness, whether that's thoughts or feelings or sensations that you're experiencing in the body. It's very important to just welcome it and allow it to be what it is. And then once you give it an allowing and an awareness and you acknowledge it, then you make the decision to drop it.
Mm,
So it's very much about allowing it in and then letting it go.
mm, that makes sense.
It's
That's
it's very
beautiful.
powerful. It's very gentle and it's very
Mhm.
powerful because, whenever we get attached to our thoughts or to our feelings or to our sensations in the body, we tend to create suffering.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, getting to that place where we can fully accept uh, where we are is not always so easy, but it's interesting. Even if we want things to change, we have to start there, right?
You have to start with allowing it to be what it is
Yeah,
before you can make a change.
yeah,
Because if you just want to make a change, you're fighting the energies. You're not moving with. It's like you have to think of it as Aikido, right? Like Aikido is always like moving with it and letting the opponent come with you, and then you move with them, and you
yeah,
tackle it, right? And that's life too. You have to move with life and then allow it to move you with it. And so then that way usually get better results.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. Um, so I I love your title, and I want to know what you mean by a new era begins. How might we experience that, and what can each of us do to contribute to a better future that feels more empowering for everyone?
Yes, yes. So what I mean by new era begins. So we live in some very interesting times right now, as most of us know. There is a lot of energetic stuff going on that's really asking us to move into a higher vibrational place. And in astrology, that's symbolized by the planets and where the planets currently are positioned in the sky. And there are multiple outer planets, which are the ones that are much further away in the solar system, and they represent more the connection to our soul's energy, to our higher self, and also to our collective self, because the soul is connected to everything, right? And so there's multiple outer planets that are shifting into new signs within the next 2 years. And the most powerful one of them, which is the furthest out, has already started this shift in 2023, very briefly, and then again in 2024. And that planet is Pluto, which is very much the planet associated with our soul's guidance for empowerment and living full out, living our life with passion and with purpose, and really feeling this energy of like, I love life, right? Like this kind of energy, that's Pluto. And Pluto asks us to become aware and eliminate anything that disempowers us and keeps us from living a passionate life full of purpose. So if there's anything in our lives right now, whether that's something connected to the past, that's connected to fear or connected to past traumas, or anything that needs to be made conscious, that needs to be transformed, we're being asked to look at that so we can live from a place of power and passion. That needs to be brought into consciousness, it needs to be made aware, and then we need to transform it and make it take ownership so that we can be more empowered in the world. That we're not functioning as victims, but that we're functioning as powerful beings, which we are. You know, the soul is, I mean, it's the most powerful thing that there is. We all have that power in us, right?
Yeah.
The universe, the source, right? That's all power. And I'm not talking about worldly power. I'm talking about spiritual power, right?
Inner power.
And you know, Pluto started the shift in the end of March of 2023 until mid-June. And then this is, by the way, this is a shift that is happening for the first time since 246 years. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was 246 years ago. That's when it entered Aquarius the last time around, right? And it's a 20-year journey. And Aquarius is the sign that is associated with collective consciousness, with collaboration towards a better future. It's connected to like-minded communities, technology, humanitarian goals, and human diversity. That's what it really, that's what Aquarius symbolizes, the sign Aquarius. And Pluto in Aquarius is very much about finding a way for us to fully be empowered so that we can live into that. We can powerfully and passionately live into this highest vibration of Aquarius. But in order to live into it, we first have to look at what's there that's keeping us from living into that. What is the disempowerment factor, right? And then Pluto went into Aquarius again this year in January, and it will briefly dip back into Capricorn September until November of 2024, just in time for the elections in the US. And then it will finally come back into Aquarius for the next 20 years from November 19th of 2024 until 2043, 44. Wow. So it's really a long-term process, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that the awakening process for globally, obviously there are things that are visible changes and some that are invisible changes. But I can see that, that shift happening. A lot of people are kind of shifting their consciousness, and it's becoming more commonplace for us to have these kinds of conversations. And I think it's really interesting to see how the planet's supporting that change and that need. Well, it's obviously a long-term change, but like a lot can happen in 20 years. 20 years might fly right by, but it'll be really interesting to see what kinds of conversations we're having after
obviously these
that time.
changes will happen, it won't take a whole 20 years for the changes to take place, but it's going to be like a slope, right?
That makes sense.
Slow start, but then it will go,
Yeah.
and
Do
speed up.
you do you think thinking about transformation and change, um, and changes that are that massive and people embracing their power more fully, would you
Mhm.
say that there's anything in the planets that show us that that support to make that change is coming too? You know what I mean? So, like we are being called to go inward to do reflection, and I would also say reach out and find people that can help us guide us through those experiences like yourself. Um, but yeah, I wonder if, I guess that could really depend on an individual's chart too, like what that support looks like and how it shows up, right?
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. Yeah. It really depends. Each person is different, right? And some people are also more ready than others to make those changes and to wake up to a new consciousness. Not everybody is going to be able to do that. And that's okay because the planet doesn't need everyone to do it. We just need, like, maybe, I think 1% is enough,
Mm.
which is really not that much. But once 1% is fully awake, that there's going to be a ripple effect, right? It's almost like you throw a stone into a lake and you see the ripples, that go out, and it just needs one stone to create this really large ripple, right? And it's the same with people waking up. We don't need for everybody to be awake,
Mm.
right? We really don't. Um, we just need for enough people to be awake so that ripple can start to go.
Right. And then other people might take their time in accordance with like what's aligned for them and been
Absolutely.
called forth from them. Yeah.
Everyone will do it in their own fashion too.
Yeah.
There'll be different ways in which people will approach this. Everyone has their own way of turning inward. Everyone has their own way of, how they relate to their higher self, or to source, or to God, or to,
Yeah.
whatever they want to call it, right? I mean, there's so many different names that we have for that spiritual connection. So, and also the connection that we have with each other, right? Like as people, as groups, or as the collective, everyone will interact with that slightly differently depending on what their own comfort levels are. But in the end, I think it's very much about, I think there's going to be a huge heart opening that will happen, and that heart opening will make it so much easier for us to trust and to connect.
Mm. Yes. It's interesting. I had an awakening experience in 2020, and it was very fast. It just kind of came upon me and was very fast. And I chalk that up to, the Aquarian shift and changes. I need to actually go see someone to find out what was going on for me in January of 2020 in my chart. And
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more stories of people having, sudden awakening experiences and changing like
Much
within
more
weeks.
common these days, yes, because there is a need for all of us to get to that place. And we are being supported from the other side to
Mm.
make this happen. Like, there is a support system that's there for us, for the whole planet to raise its vibration, right? It's the planet itself, it's the people on it, it's the beings on it. I mean, even just when you look at the animals, right? And I don't know if this is because YouTube exists or because people take videos of everything that these days, but I don't remember as a child animals like being that um connected to human beings, like all types of animals, and especially different types of animals being connected to each other, like where you see like a, I don't know, a duck with a dog, or like something bizarre where you're like, how is this a relationship? You know what I mean? And I think we're seeing it everywhere, right? Like, we're not just seeing it between people, but I think it's also it ripples out into nature, into the animal world, and into all beings, right?
Yeah, that kind of miraculous change is definitely possible. It's really interesting to see how the world is changing as well, and how the earth is changing to awaken itself,
Yeah, and to also
miracles are
accommodate
everywhere.
our awakening too, right?
Yes.
I think the earth is sort of like in a collaborative process with all of our souls
Mm.
to make this shift happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. I witnessed it myself in many occasions, and I
Yeah.
just blown away by just like how magical everything is, and how possible it is for all of us to have a total transformation, in such a short amount of time.
Yes,
Um,
it is
yeah,
going to.
so what are some things that we may want to avoid or be aware of on our journey towards more awakening, greater empowerment? And I mean, I know we kind of I there's that 20-year period that Pluto is in Aquarius. Right, that's correct, right? That's
20.
what you're saying. But
Yeah.
how long do you think it'll take for us to create this new future? Is it happen in that time period, or is it a greater span of time?
Um, well, so it's as far as the time frame is concerned, Pluto moves through three phases. The first phase is until 2029, and we get to see and experience where we feel disempowered and what's not working. And then the second phase is until 2036, and we get to investigate things a little bit deeper and go further with issues and things, and we start to make changes during that time frame. And the third phase, which is March 2036 until March 2043, we get to make a much bigger shift, and we understand at that point much better what the issues are and what really needs to happen for us. And we're probably already at a much higher vibration at that point. And so we're much more conscious, and also much more connected as a collective, like as the whole planet. Now,
Mhm.
the other thing I should say in connection with how long this will take, there are some other factors as well besides just Pluto, because Aquarius, which is the sign that Pluto is traveling through, is connected to Uranus, the planet Uranus. And also, traditionally speaking, you could say Saturn as well. But if we look at Uranus, the modern ruler, we can see that Uranus is in Taurus currently until July of 2025. And then it will move into the next sign temporarily until November 2025. And then it will be back in Taurus until April of 2026. And so while Uranus is moving through that last degree of Taurus, which is the 29 degrees, and it's sort of like an exalted degree, a critical degree when a planet moves through a sign like through that last degree. And that will happen between June and July 2025, November, December 2025, and April of 2026. And so this is very likely at that time when it moves to that last degree, we could very likely experience some earth shifts as well as changes in connection to money and currency, because Taurus rules money and currencies, and also rules the earth. And so this might be quite an uncertain time when that happens, because as human beings, most of us are not going to be prepared for that necessarily. And we might be a little bit taken aback by what does that mean? And it might be a drastic shift in how we used to live. And so it might take a little while to adapt to the new earth, or the new way of things being. But what's very important is we have to trust this process. We have to know that all is happening exactly as it needs to happen. This is really, really, really important. That we're definitely guided. Every, the earth is guided. All human beings are guided by their higher selves when this is happening. So there's no need to be afraid. There's no need to necessarily think that this is bad, right? It's not bad. It's actually the opposite of that, because we're moving into a higher frequency when this is happening. And it will be really necessary to shake things up so that we can move into that more awakened place on a collective level. So we have to remember that everything is really happening for us, not to us, if that makes any sense.
Yes, perfect sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have received and channeled messages too, similar messages about the earth itself changing in ways that will totally change our idea of what it means to be human, what it means to live
Yes.
on this planet. It's really fun to hear the astrological perspective of that. And, to also be mindful, be prepared to
Yeah.
watch things in the financial sector or whatever, how that shows up, our ideas about money maybe even changing in the next few years.
Yeah. And it will be for the better, right? It just there will be an adjustment period because it will be a little bit like, ooh, what are we doing now, right? Like this, it's just unfamiliar, right? I mean, anything that's unfamiliar sometimes can create fear in human brains because the mind loves the familiar and the mind loves to protect us from the unfamiliar. So when things happen that are unfamiliar, we sometimes go into fear. But if we can remember that this is happening for our greatest good and that this is a beautiful shift, that this is a necessary shift that will ultimately be very, very positive for the whole planet, for everyone on this planet. That's important to remember. Then
Yeah,
then it won't be as bad, then it
yeah.
won't. I mean, it's not going to be that bad anyways, but it's important to just understand that these shifts need to happen,
Right.
right?
Well,
I mean, I
Jane,
have a couple of dates here. I don't know if you're interested in some dates that might have
yes,
significance to them. Maybe for the people who are watching, it might be
yes,
interesting.
please.
One of the dates is mid-June of 2025. There is a square between Mars and Uranus at that time, and so that sometimes kicks things up. Last week we had a Mars-Uranus conjunction when all this stuff happened, politically speaking, with the Trump and all this other stuff.
Yes, yes.
Whenever Mars and Uranus come together or make an aspect to each other, things can shift quite quickly because
Mhm.
Mars is the masculine doing energy, so it can initiate things to go. Okay, let's go. And Uranus is change. So mid-June of 2025, then early November of 2025, there's a Mars-Uranus opposition. Then we have February, March of 2026. There's going to be another square between Mars and Uranus. That one is an interesting one because Mars will be in Aquarius, which Uranus rules. So it's squaring Mars. That could definitely be in connection to a very collective experience. And then the other date I have is June 2025 jumps out twice because there's also a Saturn Jupiter square in June 2025 as well. So I think we will definitely see some shifts in June 2025 in connection to possibly what's happening with the economy, what's happening with money, what's happening maybe even politically speaking, and how we want there's some turning point. There's certainly a turning point that we're experiencing there in June 2025. And then there's one other date that I have, which is late October and early November of 2024, which is coming up very soon. And that's when the elections are, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a Mars-Pluto opposition, and that can bring up some feelings. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be some very intense feelings in the air. We will definitely see, I assume that it's because of the election,
Mm-hmm.
that there will be, and maybe in other countries it will be because of some other issues that are going on in other countries, but there will be some emotional thing that will come up around anger, rage, fear, things where people are sort of like in division with each other
Mm-hmm.
to some degree. And
Yeah.
and I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to talk a little bit about, what are some things that I think we want to be more conscious about and aware of in terms of this journey with this empowerment process.
Yes,
Be
please.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think it's really important for all of us to understand that if we want to feel empowered, the the best way to go about that is to avoid separateness, to avoid creating a divide, to avoid a split between us and others, between one group and another group, between giving our power away giving our power away to like a group or to a cause in a way that then has us left feeling disempowered. So these are some very important things that we need to be aware of as we want to be moving more into an empowered place. It's also important with Pluto in Aquarius to recognize that when you do connect to a group or network of people, if that group or that network, if their goal um, is to empower people, then that's great. But if the group or network stands against something or wants to fight something, that will just create more division. So it's very important to be aware of what are we giving our energies to. And the other thing, of course, that's always important to be aware of and to acknowledge is fear. Whenever you are in fear, no matter what the reason might be, whether you feel out of control or whether you feel, that you can't be connecting the way you want to be connecting, or you can't get what you want, or life seems like it's not giving you what you want, or you feel like you're in a bad place and you're fearful for that reason. Whatever fear is there in your life, you want to be really aware of that, acknowledge it, because fear always will spin us down into a very low vibrational state. And fear is the opposite of love and of gratitude. So if you're in fear, you cannot be in a love space, and you cannot be in gratitude with life. So we have to recognize that. We have to realize, oh, if I'm in fear, it's okay to acknowledge it and to own it and to embrace it. But we don't want to get stuck there. We don't want to get stuck in that fearful place. We want to go, okay, how can I shift my fear into something different? How can I have a new perspective on it? How can I embrace something? What can I be grateful for in life? Sometimes just shifting into gratitude can really allow that fear to dissipate immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the other thing with empowerment is, as best as we can, we need to stay physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually fit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not always so easy to do, right? Because we have our resistances to certain things, we have our habits, we have the things that are familiar to us. But when it comes to the physical, you have only one body. This is it. Once that body is done, you're done. And then, of course, your soul is always going to survive and your soul will always be there. But this particular body that you're currently in, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you do with that body, it will support you to live a better, more empowered, more fulfilled life if you support this vehicle that you're currently in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that with healthy food. You can do it with working out. You can do it by regular sunlight, regular fresh air, regular sleep and rest, by eliminating chemicals from your life that destroy something in your body. You can eliminate excess of sugar, alcohol, drugs, in particular, pharmaceutical drugs that keep us numb, that keep the body in breaking down. And anything really that harms the body, right? Anything that you do in excess that harms the body. I mean, you can even do exercise in excess and it will harm the body, right?
Yeah.
So anything that we do in excess is really not a great idea. And then mentally, of course, choose healthy thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's not always going to be so easy, right? To choose healthy thoughts. Sometimes our thoughts just come up, right? We're not always in control of what we think. So allow all thoughts to arise and then choose which ones you want to give more power to. Choose your narrative, right? Like there will be thoughts that just come through and whatever, blah, 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 monkey mind, right? It just happens. But you have choices that you can make. What is your narrative? What is your general narrative? Is it divisive or is it unifying? Be mindful of those things, and then see if you can also drop your mind a little bit towards your heart. that mind-heart balance is very important as well, so that we're not cut from the neck up, that we're not disconnected from the neck up, right? Where it's just and nothing else goes on in the
Mm,
body, right?
yeah.
Then emotionally, of course, the empowerment happens by allowing ourselves to feel. We have to let ourselves feel all of our feelings. And this is not something we learn growing up. This is not something we learn in most societies, that it's okay to feel all of your feelings. I mean, I grew up being told that I'm not allowed to cry. I'm not allowed to have any feelings really, other than, be happy. So, this is very unhealthy, very, very unhealthy for the emotional body. We have to let ourselves feel, but we don't want to hold on to our feelings, right? The moment we get obsessed about our feelings or we hold on to them, then we go into suffering, and then we go into those denser vibrational feelings. But if we're actually allowing ourselves to feel what we're feeling, and then we allow it to release and to let it go, that creates spaciousness, and it's an honoring of your feeling body. You allow it to be there. So it's really about nurturing that inner baby, right? Because that inner baby is that feeling state. As a baby, you have no thoughts, right? Just feelings. So that inner baby needs to feel nurtured. It needs to be taken care of. We need to learn how to soothe ourselves. We need to learn how to forgive ourselves. And these are all things we can do to have more empowerment on an emotional level.
Mm.
And when you find yourself in sort of that, in kind of like a thought feeling loop, because sometimes feelings feed thoughts and thought feed feelings, right? You can go into like this loop. I don't know if you've ever experienced that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I tend to go there a lot. So whenever you go into this thought feeling loop, just check to see what is behind that loop. Like, what's underneath that? Am I feeling out of control? Am I feeling scared right now? Is
Mm,
that why I'm in that loop? Right? And then just acknowledge what's underneath it, and then allow that to release.
mm,
And that will kind of let go of that loop in some way.
mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, last but not least, spiritually, how can we empower ourselves spiritually? It's really very important that we connect ourselves to our higher selves regularly, especially during transition times. And what I mean by that is before we go to bed and after we wake up. So before sleep and after sleep, whenever we're in a sleep state, we're in a very high vibrational place because our soul gets to regenerate. And
Mhm.
so right before we go to sleep and right after we go to sleep are really powerful times for us to connect to that higher vibrational state. So whether we want to do that through meditation, or whether we want to do it by just being present in the here and now, or breath work, or just tuning in, or just maybe reflecting on some of our dreams that we just had, or by simply being with what's happening in our body, feeling wise, sensation wise. There are many ways we can do it. We can even go sit on the porch, or sit somewhere in nature, and just soak in the sunlight, or soak in the grass, or soak in the trees, or whatever it might be,
Mm,
right? But those transition times are very powerful, like an hour before sleep and an hour after waking up, right?
mhm. Yeah.
So that's really how we can empower ourselves, and I just wanted to share that because I thought that would be valuable for people to hear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I, you know, find that I like your what you said about choosing your narrative. And I find that if we can get into like this, if we can meditate, as you were saying, at any point in our day, that makes it a little easier to choose our narrative. And I mean, that changes your whole life if you can adopt also like the habits you're describing allow us to stay in a clear space so that we can choose love over fear, for instance. It's all so interconnected. Um, Rest, I find that
Yeah.
we don't give ourselves nearly enough rest. And I think that,
Oh,
yeah, and I think the higher your vibration, the more rest you might need to integrate things, so it's
Yeah.
like
And it's
good to
also
remember.
a cultural generational thing too, right? Because like my parents, for example, they didn't believe in resting. You know, that resting wasn't a value for them. It wasn't something that they did. They
Mm-hmm.
were just always on the go, 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 constantly, right? And so growing up in that environment, you start to believe, right, that that's the way you have to do it. You have to just constantly be on the go. And then you realize later on, wait a second, but why am I getting so exhausted? And why am I not able to just take myself in or be there for myself? Why am I constantly, emotional about certain things? And that happens because we're not giving ourselves a break. We're not giving ourselves the rest that our body needs, that our emotional body needs,
Yeah.
right? That our spiritual self needs, that break time is really really important. and
Yeah.
and like you said, especially when we start going into higher frequencies, that's going to become more and more important.
Yeah. It allows me, I know, to connect to my higher self more if I do that because you're quiet and it allows you to receive information and
Yeah.
not to react as much.
You get much better guidance
Yes.
because
Yeah.
most people think that the guidance comes from the mind,
Hmm.
but
A lot of it comes into the other
but
chakras. It's not all up
it
here.
has to, it might be coming through the mind.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not coming from the mind.
Right.
It has
Absolutely.
to come through there has to be space, right? When there's too much busyness or too much input from the outside world, the mind cannot give you the kind of guidance that you're looking for.
Yes. Yes. I find, that whole adage of listening to your gut, like listening from the belly, so to speak, is really helpful. Your body will communicate with you a lot if you quiet yourself enough to hear it.
Yeah. One of the things I joke about is that I get my best insight when I'm on the toilet.
Yeah, I
I
I
started telling because
agree.
I don't have my phone with me usually I mean I'm sure some people even take their phone with them when they go to the bathroom, but
Yeah.
I don't do that. So I just sit there and I'm just like da 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 da, and all of a sudden insight it just comes in and I'm like, oh, I do my best thinking on the pot.
I love that. And then the shower too. A lot of
And in
people
the
can
shower,
do
yep. In the
wellness.
shower, on the pot, yep.
Yeah, anywhere that you can get a break.
Anywhere where you just have nothing that distracts you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or long drives. I get a lot of
Yep.
great ideas on long drives. That's when all
Okay.
kinds of trouble can happen. I, I mean, good kind of trouble. But
Nature too. I mean, if you take walks in nature, I can get really great inspiration and
yeah, that is also really incredibly
joy. Yeah.
inspiring and it's rejuvenating too. Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing talk, and thank you for giving us like the astrological perspective, but also the practical tools and um, you know, I guess philosophies that we can take with us in going into this change and this time of awakening because, like you say, self-care is so necessary as we make these changes. And the quieter we can get, the more we can see what's happening too. We can actually witness the change and be in tune with what's going on. And, getting into acceptance, like you said, is so important. There may be things that challenge our whole idea of life in core ways, and I actually want to ask you a question that it always fascinates me is have you witnessed any particular things in your own life that were big shifts in terms of how you looked at life or how you looked at how the world operates or maybe even quantum experiences, things like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. At 19 was my first one.
Hmm.
When I read this book about reincarnation and about astrology, and it was a huge shift in my perspective towards how I operated as a human being and how I saw my past, how I saw my family, how I interacted with the world. Because all of a sudden I had a concept of, oh, I am not just a human being. I am also a soul. And I'm not just a soul, I'm also a soul that has had many, many lifetimes and is on a purpose, like on a journey, like that there's a journey, there's something that I'm needing to experience here, right? And that has shifted me in a big way. And I wouldn't even say that, like, I'm not a Buddhist or anything like that. I don't have a particular religion that I abide by, but I think my belief systems are very much in accordance to what makes sense to me and what feels right to me. Like I have a sort of like an inner thermometer that sort of like goes by, like, does that feel right? Okay, I'm moving towards it. And if it doesn't feel right, I'm like, feel moving away from it, right? So there's an inner system in me that sort of like is able to see, like, does this work for me? And I know that a lot of the things that work for me may not necessarily work for other people.
Mm.
I'm aware of that and I understand that. I think everyone has their own inner system that they live by or need to live by. And certain things work for certain people and not for others. But that is the beauty of diversity, right? And that's what we're also trying to learn in this Aquarian age, is this ability to honor that diversity in all of us, that we're all different, that we all have different preferences, that we all have different ways of doing things and feeling into things and interacting with the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
I guess another big experience I've had was last year. Well, actually, the last 3 years there were a bunch. Um, one of them was when I had an eclipse on my moon sun opposition, and it was a lunar eclipse, and so they were right on top of both of my planets. And I knew that that year something big was going to happen. And I have the moon in Scorpio and the sun in Taurus. And so the moon nodes were in Scorpio Taurus as well at the time. And this was in 2022. And unfortunately, my very dear furry baby died that year. And so that was a huge loss and a huge grieving process for me. And I knew it was coming because she was 20 years old. So I knew it had to happen. But when I saw it in my chart, I was like, oh no, what's gonna happen? I had a bit of a fearful moment there because I saw that coming. And then when it happened, it was very painful, but it was at the same time, it was also this very beautiful experience
Mm.
because I could feel her communicating with me. And she still does to this day. She's still around me and she sends me butterflies. She sends me little deer. The other day I had a deer lying right underneath my window under that bush. And I know that deer showed up because I was thinking of her and I was grieving and I was sad. And then all of a sudden that deer showed up and started rolling up next to my bush. And I was like, thank you, Sophie. That's so sweet. She
Mhm.
brings me things. So that was a real shift as well, to just see that it's bittersweet, right? Like sometimes
Mm.
things happen that you're afraid of happening and it's painful and you go through that pain, but there's also beauty that comes with it too, because first of all, because of the love that I know I felt for her, which, is huge. And then the connection, like that connection doesn't, there's no separation there, it's still there.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then last year I had another experience where I visited my family back in Austria, and I hadn't been there in 5 years. And I had another transit in my chart, a Chiron return at that point. And the Chiron return is very much about our woundedness from our childhood.
Mm.
And so I didn't really look at my chart before I went back home, and I really should have. I went home and it brought up all this stuff, all this wounding from my childhood. It just, everything just, it was like a bomb had hit me, emotional bomb. And I was like, whoa. But at the same time, it happened and it felt really awful. But at the same time, I also was able to complete something. It was like a completion process of this like woundedness that I had. And now it's like, oh, I'm complete with this now. Like I
Mhm.
had to go there one last time and now I'm complete. Right?
Mhm.
So there's these experiences that you have that really it you go into them and something happens and you think it's like the most awful thing that ever happened to you, but then you're like, oh wait, this is like the most transformative thing that ever happened to me. It's just really beautiful, you know?
Yeah, yeah. When you can have that closure, uh, sort of closure in a situation, that's really powerful, and it doesn't always come in a pleasant way for sure. You were talking about your cat, and I had a cat that moved on, and I will hear her jumping off of surfaces. I'll feel her jump on my bed at night sometimes. I've actually heard her little claw scratches on the couch, you know. She's very playful. It's really fun to still have that connection with her, you know. I can
Yeah.
sense her around too sometimes. It's amazing, like how present they can be.
Yeah.
It's very moving.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing those experiences. That was just, I love it when we can give context to, you know, what's going on and what's transforming for us. And I think it's very validating for other people to hear stories. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, well, this has been great. I would love it if you would share, you have this beautiful gift that you're giving everyone,
Yeah.
and I would love it if you could share a bit more about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was thinking about what can I do for people that would be really valuable so that you guys can really get something out of, connecting with me. And so I have an online community currently where I do daily forecasts that I send out via email, and I have monthly webinars, and I do new moon and full moon videos and new moon and full moon articles that I have with coaching questions so that you can align yourself to the current energies and can really work, on your own as well and do your own work with it. And so I wanted to give a free month of my star membership to everybody who is watching this, and if you're interested. And this is basically a membership where you sign up for that with a coupon code that will be available to you. I think below the
Below the
video
video. Yep.
video. And you can sign up, and then if you wanted to cancel the membership, it's a reoccurring membership, so it will go on if you don't cancel it, but you can cancel it after 3 weeks or so if you don't like the membership. And you can do it on my website via the membership portal. It's very easy to do. So there's no, so that you don't feel like you have to be in it forever or whatever. You can manage it on your own.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is lovely. Gosh, that is very actually like just the what you're offering the membership is amazing. That is a lot of material and incredibly helpful and supportive for making decisions going forward.
Definitely going to be helpful. I mean, especially with the way things are going to happen, because
Mm,
everything's going to happen pretty quickly
yeah.
within the next couple of years, and I think it's going to
Right.
be really helpful to be able to understand the energies, first of all,
Mhm.
and to also have the coaching questions to work with the energies. So then you can really be in alignment and let yourself move into these higher vibrations of all of that. And that's really the key, is that we allow ourselves to move into these higher vibrations, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a treat, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing your wisdom and your time with us. Really appreciate it, Sonia.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that. Thank you.